The Forge Academy floated like a jewel among the stars. Its towers, made of shining metal, reached high above the planet's surface, reflecting the twin suns in brilliant flashes of light. Every alien civilization in the nearby star system knew this place. It was a place of power, skill, and prestige. Those who graduated here became the galaxy's greatest metal crafters, and yet, despite its fame, a single new student would arrive, who would challenge everything the Academy thought it knew about strength, skill, and ingenuity. Her name was Lena. Lena was human, small and fragile compared to the tall, thick-limbed aliens who filled the grand hall of the Academy. Their skin shimmered in colors she had never seen. Their arms were long and strong, and their eyes glowed, with a faint light that made her feel she was constantly being measured. She carried a simple bag over her shoulder, heavy with tools and objects from her homeworld. Every step she took made her feel more aware of how different she was. When she entered the main hall, a silence fell. The headmaster, a towering four-armed creature with golden metal skin, looked down at her. His voice boomed like a storm. "Human, you will learn the art of forging here. But know this, humans are weak. You have no history of strength. You will struggle." Lina's heart raced, but she held her head high. "I will try my best," she said, her voice steady. The other students snickered. Some leaned over to whisper, "How could a human survive here? And bone and flesh cannot compete with metal." Lena ignored them. She had learned long ago that humans often succeeded not because they were the strongest, but because they were clever. The first lesson began immediately. The students were led into the Grand Forge, a massive chamber filled with roaring furnaces, floating tools, and molten metal glowing like captured suns. The challenge was simple: forge a simple blade that could withstand extreme pressure and heat. Easy for the aliens, who had been working with metal since birth. Almost impossible for a human. Lena approached the furnace. She reached into her bag, feeling the familiar texture of a small, hardened object. She had brought it from Earth, something no one else had, a bone from an extinct Earth predator, polished and sturdy. While the alien's hands moved over molten steel, she felt the weight and shape of the bone. Imagining what it could do, her first attempt with metal failed. The small human hand struggled to bend. The heavy, glowing steel, sparks flew, and she stumbled back. Some students laughed. "Pathetic," one hissed. "The human cannot even hold metal straight." Lena ignored them. She placed the bone on the worktable. Slowly, carefully, she began shaping it, scraping and polishing it with precision. Unlike metal, which required brute force, the bone responded to her touch. It bent slightly without breaking, and when she tapped it, it emitted a strange hum, almost as if it recognized her intention. The aliens around her stopped laughing. A few leaned in. Curious, one of the tallest students, a four-eyed creature named Crow, frowned. "What is that? You cannot forge with bone." "I am not trying to make metal," Lena said calmly. "I am trying to make something else." By the time the first round of the lesson ended, the alien blades were all shiny and sharp. Most were beautiful, polished to perfection, but all were predictable. Lina's creation, however, glowed softly with a strange light. It was not a blade in the traditional sense. It was curved and smooth, with subtle ridges and a shape that seemed alive. The headmaster inspected her work, frowning. "This is unusual," he said. "It will not survive the heat test." Lena nodded. "Perhaps it will survive differently than you expect." The test began. Students placed their creations in the heat chamber. Flames roared, and metal twisted under pressure. One by one, the alien blades cracked, bent, or shattered. Lena placed her bone creation into the chamber. Flames licked its surface, and for a moment it seemed like it might fail. Then, slowly, it held its shape. Not only that, it glowed slightly brighter, as if feeding off the energy around it. When the heat finally died down, the bone was intact, smooth, and unbroken. The hall went silent. The students stared. Krill's jaw dropped. The headmaster's eyes widened, though he tried to hide it. "How?" he whispered. Lena smiled faintly. "It works because it moves with pressure, not against it. Metal is rigid. Bone can adapt." Some students whispered in awe. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile, and unskilled. And yet, here was one human outperforming the best metal crafters at their own game. After the lesson, Lena retreated to a quiet corner of the academy. She unpacked more small objects from her bag, fragments of bone, shells, and other natural materials from Earth. She studied them under a small light, thinking about how each one was strong in its own way, yet flexible, intelligent, and full of hidden strength. Kral approached, his multiple eyes narrowing. "Human," he said, his voice low. "Why do you use bone? No one has ever succeeded with bone. You are risking humiliation." Lena looked up, calm. "I am not trying to copy you. I am trying to see what I can make with what I know. Metal is not the only way to be strong." Kral stared at her, his expression unreadable. Slowly, he nodded. "Perhaps we will see." In the days that followed, Lena experimented more. She learned to carve the bone, polish it, and combine it with small metal reinforcements. She discovered that bone, unlike metal, could absorb shocks, flex under pressure, and even interact with energy fields in unexpected ways. The other students, who had once mocked her, began to watch in secret. Some were curious, some were jealous, but all realized that Lena was changing the rules of the academy without anyone telling her to. One afternoon, during a practice session, an accident occurred. A student's metal blade cracked and flew across the room. It would have struck Lena, but her bone creation subtly moved in her hand, deflecting the impact. The hall gasped. "You see," Lena said quietly to no one in particular, "strength is not always about power. Sometimes it is about knowing how to move with the world around you." That night, Lena lay in her small room, looking out at the stars. She thought of Earth, of the forests and oceans, of predators and prey that survive by being clever, not just strong. She realized that humans, though underestimated, carried something powerful inside: imagination, intuition, and resilience. And tomorrow, she would bring that power to the Forge Academy again. The next morning, the academy held a grand trial. Students were to craft tools that could perform in zero gravity, withstand energy fields, and endure extreme pressure. Lena carried only her bone, small pieces of metal, and her human skill. The aliens all sneered. But as the trial began, Lena's creation adapted. It stretched, flexed, and resonated in ways the pure metal tools could not. Sparks of energy bent harmlessly around it. When the final test came, a simulated meteor strike had absorbed the impact, remaining perfectly intact. The other students' tools shattered. Whispers turned to murmurs. Murmurs turned to astonishment. Humans were supposed to be weak, but Lena, a single human girl, had just outperformed generations of alien crafters. The headmaster stared at her in silence, his expression unreadable. Then he slowly nodded. "Perhaps humans have lessons to teach us after all." Lena smiled quietly, keeping her focus. She did not need praise. She had learned something far more valuable, that being different was her strength, and that no tradition, no expectation, could limit what she could create. As she left the hall, students whispered her name, some in awe, some in fear, some in envy. Lena did not care. She knew that tomorrow, the Forge Academy would face something new, something human, and that was only the beginning. The next morning, Lena woke before the sun rose over the Forge Academy. The twin suns bathed the towers in golden light, and the massive forges in the distance glowed like molten stars. While the other students still slept, Lena quietly gathered her tools. She had learned quickly that humans could succeed here, not by copying alien methods, but by seeing things differently. Today was practice day, and the challenge was far more difficult than yesterday. Each student had to craft a device capable of withstanding gravity shifts, energy distortions, and pressure extremes all at once. For the aliens, this was routine. They had trained for decades to anticipate the forces at play. For Lena, it was an opportunity to test her ideas, to see what a human mind could achieve when it ignored limits. She carried her small collection of bones, polished shards from Earth, and a few metal tools. As she worked, She remembered the first trial. Her bone creation had endured the heat test, not by being stronger than metal, but by moving with it, by responding naturally to stress. She realized she could expand this principle. Structures could bend, flex, and adapt without breaking, if shaped with care. The Grand Forge was already alive with activity when Lena entered. Aliens of all shapes and sizes worked with fire and molten metal. Some shaped massive hammers, others crafted blades that glowed with energy. They were efficient, precise, and skilled but rigid. Every student followed the same patterns their ancestors had passed down. And yet, Lena saw potential for something different, something alive. She carefully placed her bones on her worktable and began to carve. The fragments were small, but each one had a natural curve, a hidden strength. She connected pieces together with thin strips of metal, using them not for rigidity, but as guides to shape the natural flexibility of the bone. Slowly, a structure emerged. It looked delicate, almost fragile, but Lena knew better. A sudden shout broke her concentration. Kral, the four-eyed student who had mocked her yesterday, was hovering over another table. His creation, a massive metallic staff, had bent under the pressure of a simulated gravity shift. He slammed it down, sparks flying. "You see, human?" he called, glaring at her. "Even your clever tricks will fail. Bone cannot hold against real stress." Lena looked at him calmly. "Bone works differently," she said. "It doesn't resist, it adapts. It doesn't break, it responds." Kral snorted. "Words mean nothing in the forge. Only results matter." The trial began. Gravity shifted, and the tables tilted. Sparks flew from misaligned metals. Aliens cursed as their creations buckled, twisted, and collapsed. Lena's hands moved carefully, adjusting the connections between the bones. With every shift, the structure responded. It flexed, twisted slightly, and returned to shape. The energy distortion swept past over her work, and her creation glowed faintly, stabilizing itself in a way no metal could. Some of the students paused, watching in disbelief. A low murmur ran through the hall. "Is it still intact?" One whispered, "Yes," another replied. "How? It's only bone." The headmaster approached, his golden arms crossed over his chest. His gaze, sharp and critical, softened slightly as he observed Lena's work. "You are human," he said quietly, "and yet you see possibilities that metal alone cannot provide. Interesting." The trial continued. Lena noticed a pattern, where metal cracked or bent unpredictably. Her bone structure absorbed the forces and distributed them evenly. She adjusted, twisted, and carved with care. After an hour, the trial ended. The alien students' creations were warped, broken, or rendered useless. Lena's creation, though delicate in appearance, was perfectly intact. Kral stomped over to her table, his expression furious. "Impossible! How can bone withstand this?" Lena smiled faintly. "Because I did not make it resist. I made it move." For a moment, Kral said nothing. Then, without a word, he walked away, glaring at her from the distance. But Lena knew something had changed. The whispers among the students were different now. Some sounded like curiosity, others unease. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, and Lena was proving that even one human could change expectations. That evening, Lena returned to her small room. She unpacked the rest of her items, laying them on the table carefully. There were fragments of shells, curved bones, and pieces of material she had collected from Earth. She studied each one, noticing the small details, the way a bone's inner structure could flex, the strength hidden in a curve, the natural balance of shells shaped by the ocean. She realized humans had learned these lessons long ago, but the alien civilizations, in their pursuit of perfection through metal, had forgotten. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. Lena opened the door to see Tira, a young alien student with iridescent skin and delicate wings. Tira's gaze was nervous, but she held a small piece of metal she had been working on Lena. She whispered, I want to understand what you are doing. How do you make bone?" Worked. Lena smiled. "It is not magic. It is patience and observation. You must study how it behaves naturally, not force it to be something it is not." Tira nodded slowly. "Can you?" Teach me. I can show you, Lena said, but you must be willing to think differently. The way you are taught will not work here. The next day, Lena and Tira worked side by side. Lena demonstrated how to carve and shape the bone, how to join pieces so they could flex, and how to use small amounts of metal as guidance rather than support. Tira watched carefully, her wings trembling with excitement. Slowly, she began to understand. Meanwhile, Kral and his friends watched from a distance. They were no longer mocking. Instead, there was tension in their movements. A new possibility had emerged, one they had not expected. Humans, fragile and underestimated, could teach lessons that their metal traditions had never imagined. The next trial was announced. Students had to craft a weapon or tool that could interact with energy fields. Lena considered carefully. She knew metal could conduct energy, but bone could do something more interesting. It could resonate with energy, bending it, stabilizing it, and redirecting it in ways that the aliens had never considered. For hours, Lena worked. She carved intricate patterns into the bone, creating channels that guided energy through it rather than forcing it along a single path. She joined pieces with thin metal reinforcements, not to strengthen, but to shape the natural response of the structure. When she was done, her creation looked delicate, almost fragile, but Lena knew its true power. The energy test began. Aliens' weapons sparked violently, overheated, or short-circuited. Lena's creation, however, hummed softly. Energy flowed through it, bending and twisting, guided by the carved channels. The judges were astonished. The energy field tests had never produced such smooth, stable results for the first time. The headmaster spoke aloud. Remarkable. This is not metal forging. This is adaptation. Intelligence applied to creation. Lena nodded quietly, feeling a quiet pride. She did not need their praise. She had learned something far more important. Humans had a different kind of strength, one born from creativity, intuition, and the ability to observe and adapt. By the end of the day, whispers of her work had spread through the academy. Some students approached her, curious and respectful. Others avoided her, wary of a power they could not yet understand. Even Kral seemed troubled, watching her with narrowed eyes. That night, Lena sat by the window of her room, looking out at the stars. She thought of Earth, of force and oceans, of creatures that survived not by brute force, but by intelligence and flexibility. She realized that humans had been underestimated across the galaxy for a long time. But here, in the Forge Academy, she could show what a human mind could achieve. And tomorrow, she would face the greatest challenge yet, a test where her ingenuity would be pushed to the limit, and where the other students might finally recognize the value of human creativity, or try to destroy it before it could succeed. Lena lay down to rest, her mind racing with ideas. She did not sleep long, for she knew the Forge demanded attention, and the galaxy demanded innovation. But as she closed her eyes, she felt a quiet certainty. She had discovered something that no alien student could match: the ability to see possibility where others saw limits, the courage to try what others would not, and the understanding that true strength was not always visible. The Forge Academy was about to change, whether anyone wanted it to or not. The Forge Academy buzzed with tension. Word of Lena's achievements had spread like wildfire. Students who had once dismissed her as weak now whispered in awe and sometimes in fear. Her bone creations had survived tests no metal could endure, and some students began to worry that the rules of the academy might no longer apply. Kral paced in the Grand Forge, his multiple eyes narrowing. He had watched Lena carefully, studying the way she worked. It was infuriating. Humans were supposed to be weak, yet she had outperformed him and others in every trial. He clenched his fists. "We cannot allow her to continue like this," he muttered. "No one will respect metal again if a human keeps winning." His friends nodded in agreement. Together, they began plotting ways to sabotage Lena, hoping to restore the academy's traditional hierarchy. Meanwhile, Lena arrived at the forge early, carrying her collection of bones, shells, and metal strips. She felt a mix of excitement and caution. Today's challenge would be different. The academy had announced a forge war, a full-scale competition, where each student's creations would be tested under extreme conditions, including energy storms, high-impact collisions, and simulated alien atmospheres. It was a battle of skill, endurance, and ingenuity. Lena set up her workspace and began carefully examining her materials. She had learned a valuable lesson from her previous experiments. Bone could adapt, but only if she understood its natural structure. She studied each fragment, turning it over in her hands, listening to the faint hums and vibrations it produced. Even small differences in thickness, curve, or density could affect performance. Tyr arrived, carrying her own partially completed creation. "Lena," she said nervously, "Kral and his friends, they're planning something. I overheard them talking. They want to break your work during the test." Lena looked at her calmly. "Let them try. I am not afraid. My creations do what I intend, not what they hope to destroy. But thank you for warning me." The Forge War began with a loud gong that echoed through the academy. Students moved quickly, adjusting tools and finalizing their creations. Sparks flew as metal bent, hammered, and twisted. Aliens shouted to one another, coordinating their attacks, while Lena and Tyr worked silently, focused on precision rather than speed. The first trial tested durability. Massive weights fell onto the students' creations, and energy fields pulsed through them. Most metal tools crumpled or shattered. Lena's bone creation absorbed the shocks, flexing naturally and dispersing energy through its carefully carved channels. It did not merely survive, it thrived under pressure, bending without breaking, adjusting instantly to every force. A group of students gasped, "How is it still intact?" One whispered. Krill's jaw tightened. "Impossible," he muttered, his fist clenching. The second trial was mobility. Students had to craft a weapon or tool that could move with the user, responding instantly to their commands in zero-gravity conditions. Lena's creation adapted flawlessly. It twisted, bent, and balanced itself as she moved her hands, almost as if it were alive. Tyr, following Lena's guidance, managed to stabilize her own creation in the same way. Though not as perfectly dialed by now, the whispers had grown into astonished murmurs. Humans were not just surviving, they were changing the rules of the academy. Kral decided it was time to intervene directly. During the third trial, which involved simulated energy storms, he attempted to sabotage Lena as she worked. He swung a metallic arm over her table, hoping to knock her creation to the ground. Lena reacted instantly. She adjusted her hold, allowing the bone structure to flex and absorb the force. The metal arm bounced harmlessly off the edges of her creation, leaving it intact. Kral stared, dumbfounded. Every attempt he made to destroy her work failed. Lena's calm focus and understanding of the natural materials gave her an advantage. No brute force could overcome. Humans are impossible, Kral muttered under his breath. The final trial was the most difficult. Students had to forge a weapon or tool that could perform multiple functions simultaneously, including energy conduction, structural support, and adaptive defense. The hall filled with tension. Every eye was on Lena. She took a deep breath and studied her materials. She combined bone, shells, and small amounts of metal. Following the pattern she had developed over weeks, her hands moved with precision, carving channels, adding reinforcements where needed, and leaving natural curves intact. The result was a creation that looked fragile, delicate, almost like an art piece, but Lena knew its true power. When the trial began, energy pulses shot across the hall, heavy weights fell, and sparks flew everywhere. Most students' creations failed almost immediately, bending, breaking, or short-circuiting. Lena's creation, however, responded beautifully. It absorbed impacts, guided energy safely, and even flexed to balance under unpredictable forces. The judges leaned forward, eyes wide in astonishment. This has never been done before," one whispered. "How does it survive?" Lena said nothing. She simply observed, adjusting tiny details as her creation moved. It responded to her touch like a living thing, distributing forces intelligently and adapting to challenges in real time. At the end of the trial, silence fell over the hall. Lena's creation stood intact, perfectly balanced, and fully functional. Kral stared, speechless. The other students were either in awe or disbelief. The headmaster, who had remained stern throughout the trials, finally nodded. "You have done something remarkable, Lena," he said. "You have shown us a new way of thinking. Strength is not only about metal and force, it is about understanding, adaptation, and intelligence. Humans may indeed have much to teach us." Some students clapped, though many remained quiet, unsure how to react. Krell turned and stormed away, muttering to himself. Lena watched him go. Understanding that this was only the beginning, she had earned respect, but she had also made enemies later. In the quiet of her room, Lena and Tira examined the results of the Forge War. Tira held a small energy crystal she had stabilized with Lena's guidance. I can't believe it worked," she said. "I never thought bone and shells could do this." Lena smiled. "It is not the material alone. It is the way we understand it, how we let it work with us rather than against us. Humans have always learned to survive by observing, adapting, and improvising. That is our strength." Tira nodded slowly. "You've taught me more in a few days than I learned in years here." The next morning, Lena awoke to find that her success had inspired others. Students approached her, asking questions, requesting guidance, and some even trying small experiments with natural materials. The Academy's rigid hierarchy had begun to shift. Tradition still held strong, but a new idea was taking root that creativity, intelligence, and adaptability could rival even the most powerful metals. Krell, however, was not finished. He approached Lena in private later that day, his expression unreadable. "You have changed the Academy," he said quietly. "I cannot deny your skill, but you must know that not everyone will accept this. Some will try to stop you. Are you prepared for that?" Lena looked at him calmly. "I am human. We are not known for giving up easily. If they challenge me, I will meet them with the same focus and ingenuity I used in the trials. I do not fear challenges." Krell stared for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well, but be warned, some will not learn, and some will resist. The Forge is a place of tradition, and tradition can be dangerous when threatened." Lena smiled faintly. "Then I will show them that adaptation and understanding are more powerful than fear." That night, Lena prepared for the next day. She polished her bone creations, examined each joint, and thought carefully about every curve and channel. She knew that the upcoming trials would be harder, that some students would attempt sabotage again, and that the stakes were rising. But she also knew that she had something unique, the ability to see possibilities where others saw limits, to combine knowledge, intuition, and human creativity into something powerful. As she lay down to rest, Lena gazed out at the stars once more. She thought of Earth, of the creatures that had survived impossible odds through intelligence and adaptation. And she realized that humans had carried this legacy across the galaxy. And here, in the Forge Academy, she would prove that one human could inspire a new way of thinking, even among the most rigid civilizations. The Forge Wars were far from over. Challenges, rivalries, and tests awaited. But Lena was ready. She had faced the impossible before, and she would face it again because humans did not rely solely on strength. Humans relied on ingenuity, courage, and the ability to see what others could not. And that was a power the galaxy had never truly understood until now. The Forge Academy was quiet that morning, but the air was thick with anticipation. Word had spread across the Academy. Lena, the human girl, had survived the Forge Wars and challenged tradition. Today was the final contest, a test of ultimate skill and innovation. Every student would compete to create a device, weapon, or tool capable of performing multiple complex tasks under extreme conditions. Success here would determine not only the winner of the Forge Academy, but also the direction of its future. The Grand Hall had been prepared. Massive energy fields hummed across the floor, levitating platforms shifted unpredictably, and simulated storms filled the room with swirling light and sparks. The judges, senior masters from every known civilization, took their positions. Their faces were serious. None had ever seen a human reach this far. Some whispered doubts. Others watched with curiosity. Lena entered calmly, carrying her collection of bone fragments, shells, and metal strips. She felt a surge of focus, like a familiar rhythm of thought. Humans were rare in this academy, often dismissed as fragile or weak. Yet here she was, about to face the ultimate challenge, armed with nothing but her understanding of nature, ingenuity, and persistence. Tira ran up to her side. "Are you ready?" she asked, her wings trembling slightly. "I'm ready," Lena replied softly. "Focus, patience, and observation, those are the keys. Everything else will follow." Crow watched from across the hall, his expression a mix of frustration and admiration. He had tried to undermine her during the Forge Wars, but every attempt had failed. Today, he would observe, not interfere, at least for now. He understood that Lena's skill was beyond anything he had anticipated. The gong sounded, echoing through the vast hall. Students rushed to their stations, beginning the final contest. Sparks flew, metal bent, and energy fields pulsed as each creation was tested under extreme conditions. Most students relied on brute strength, forcing their creations to resist and endure. Many failed almost immediately. Lena, however, worked methodically. She examined her bones and shells carefully, listening to their faint vibrations. She arranged them in patterns that followed natural structures, adding subtle metal reinforcements not to strengthen, but to guide the flow of energy. She carved channels, smooth curves, and interlocking segments so that her creation could adapt to forces rather than fight them. The first phase tested endurance. Heavy weights fell from the ceiling, energy pulses hit from every angle, and simulated earthquakes shook the platforms. Lana's creation flexed and shifted, absorbing impacts and distributing forces evenly. While metal weapons bent and shattered, her bone structure held perfectly. The judges leaned forward, murmuring among themselves. "This is remarkable," one whispered. "It behaves almost like a living creature, yet it is not alive." The second phase tested adaptability. Students had to use their creations in zero gravity, responding instantly to changes in position, speed, and energy flow. Lana's creation moved with her, adjusting to each shift. It twisted, bent, and balanced automatically, almost as if it anticipated her next move. Tira, following Lana's example, managed to stabilize her own creation in a simpler way. Other students struggled, their creations crashing or malfunctioning under the chaotic conditions. Krill's eyes narrowed. Lana's approach was impossible to counter with brute strength alone. He realized she had introduced a new kind of strategy, observing and responding rather than resisting. The final phase was the most difficult. Students had to perform multiple tasks simultaneously, conducting energy, defending against impacts, and manipulating objects with precision. Sparks filled the room, and the simulated storms raged around them. Metal and energy clashed everywhere. Many students' creations failed immediately, bending or collapsing under pressure. Lana's hands moved swiftly, guided by years of human intuition and observation. Her bone structure resonated with the energy fields, bending and channeling them smoothly. It absorbed impacts, balanced forces, and completed complex tasks flawlessly. The judges gasped in astonishment. The creation was perfect, not just strong, but intelligent in its response to the environment. One of the senior masters, a four-winged alien with crystalline skin, spoke aloud. "I have trained students for centuries. I have never seen such harmony between mind and material. This is beyond forging. This is understanding." The other students whispered in awe. Even Crow, who had attempted to dominate the academy through tradition and power, looked stunned. He realized that Lana's approach had introduced something the Forge had never seen. A new standard of skill based on creativity and insight, not just strength. The final moment arrived. The judges activated the ultimate test, a simulated cosmic storm, combining extreme gravity, energy pulses, and structural impacts. Metal creations bent and shattered almost immediately. Lana's creation glowed softly as it absorbed and redirected the forces. It bent like living wood in the wind, flexed like tendons in a running predator, and bounced perfectly with every movement. The storm passed, leaving her creation intact and functional. Silence fell over the hall. The judges inspected Lina's work carefully. Then, slowly, the headmaster rose and spoke. "Human," he said, his golden arms gleaming in the storm-lit hall, "you have achieved what no other student has. You have not only survived the Forge Wars, but you have created a new paradigm. Strength is not only mental and force, it is intelligence, adaptation, and creativity. You have set a new standard for this academy and for all who will follow." Applause erupted from the students who had once mocked her, while others simply stared in disbelief. Krell stepped forward, his expression unreadable, then bowed slightly. "You have taught us a lesson we did not know we needed," he said quietly. "I respect you." Lina smiled, a calm and quiet gesture. She did not need their praise. She had already learned something more important. Humans, though underestimated, could achieve incredible things through creativity, observation, and courage. Later, in the quiet of her room, Lina and Tira examined the results. Tira held her stabilized energy crystal, still glowing softly. "I never imagined humans could do this," she said. "You have changed everything." Lina nodded. "It is not just humans. It is anyone who learns to see differently, to adapt, and to create. Metal is strong, but understanding is stronger." Word of Lina's achievement spread quickly across the academy and even to neighboring civilizations. Students began experimenting with natural materials, inspired by her methods. The Forge Academy's curriculum slowly shifted, integrating organic structures, adaptive designs, and human-inspired ingenuity alongside traditional metalworking. Even Krell began to adapt. He studied Lina's techniques, combining metal with flexible structures. Though reluctant at first, he realized that tradition alone could not withstand the future. Creativity and adaptation were as important as strength. Months later, Lina stood at the highest tower of the Forge Academy, looking out at the twin suns rising over the planet. The academy had changed, and she had changed it. Students worked side by side, experimenting freely, blending metal and natural materials. The Forge was alive in a new way, full of possibility, intelligence, and life. Lina smiled softly. She thought of Earth, of oceans, force, and creatures that had survived impossible odds. She realized that humans carried that legacy across the galaxy. They were underestimated, yes, but their ingenuity, courage, and ability to adapt were unmatched. And here, in the Forge Academy, she had proven it for the first time. The galaxy began to understand that humans were not merely survivors, they were innovators, creators, and thinkers capable of reshaping the universe itself. Lina took a deep breath and looked at the horizon. Challenges would come again. Rivalries would rise. But humans had a gift the galaxy had yet to fully grasp, the ability to see possibility where others saw limits, and to shape the world through intelligence and courage. The Forge Academy had learned a lesson it would never forget. And Lina, the human girl who had chosen bone instead of metal, had become a symbol of what humans could achieve: strength born of mind, creativity, and the unyielding spirit to try the impossible. The suns rose higher, shining on the towers of the academy. Lina smiled, quietly confident. She had not only survived the Forge Wars, she had changed the future. And this was only the beginning.